Hello, it's Ken. Thank you for watching. The Bible says before the law, during the law, and after the law. It gives you warnings about eating blood. Before the law, you've got warnings in Genesis 9:4, and then during the law, you've got warnings in Leviticus 17:14, and then after the law, you've got warnings in the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 15 and verse 20. I'm going to read you that verse, by the way. Acts 15:20. But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols and from fornication and from things strangled and from blood. And the idea there is when you kill the animal, you just don't strangle the animal to death because you leave the blood inside the animal. And the exhortation here is to get the blood out of the animal before you eat the animal. There's a situation back in the Old Testament, 1 Samuel 14, verse 31. Saul and the people, they've just smote their enemies, and the people are real faint, and they're going after the spoil of the enemies. And we're in 1 Samuel 14, starting with about verse 32. And the people flew upon the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slew them on the ground, and the people did eat them with the blood. And then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people sin against the Lord, and that they eat with the blood. And he said, You have transgressed, roll a great stone unto me this day. And Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people, and say unto them, Bring me hither every man his ox, and every man his sheep, and slay them here and eat, and sin not against the Lord in eating with the blood. And all the people brought every man his ox with him that night, and slew them there. And what Saul's doing is they're rolling in a stone, and they're slaughtering the animals on the stone. And they slaughter the animal, and the blood comes out of the animal. What they were doing prior to that, they were actually cooking and eating the animal from the ground. It's kind of like Kalua pig over in Hawaii. Many years ago, I used to live in Hawaii, and they had a little thing they do where they actually cook the animal in the ground. They dig a hole, put hot coals in the hole, and put the animal on top of the hot coals, and kind of bury it around the sides, and it causes the hot heat to go up through the animal, and it cooks the animal. And what they were doing, they were here in this passage, they're eating the animal on the ground. They're cooking it in the ground with the blood inside the animal, and God doesn't want them to do that. And so what Saul said was, bring this rock, this big stone, and they started slaughtering the animals on top of the stone, and so the blood flew off. And so the idea is that you don't eat the meat with the blood. In other words, you get the blood out of the system there. And we're not saying that you've got to go off the deep end about it. I knew a brother one time that did a test on some meat. He took a steak or something like that, and he actually put it in vinegar. And what he was trying to do is extract all the blood out of the meat tissue. And he did that, and then he cooked it and ate it. And he told me that it was just a gray tissue. It was not delicious. It was not good at all. It was just a gray tissue that he ate. You know, the Bible says eat, drink, and enjoy. You know, we're supposed to enjoy our meat. And so we don't go off the deep end about something like that. The idea is, well, we teach it's a conscience issue to eat it or not to eat it. In some countries, they eat blood sausage. And some countries, they eat blood pudding. And so we say it's a conscience issue. The Bible says in Romans chapter 14 and verse 23, He that doubteth is damned if he eats. So if you got some doubts about eating it, I wouldn't eat it if you got a doubt about it. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and chapter 10, he said, All things are lawful unto me. And the idea is that you can eat anything you want. All things are lawful. But if you got a problem with your conscience, then I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't eat it. And it's not about the nutritional value. That's not the issue. The idea is the life of the flesh is in the blood. It's what that represents. It represents life. Back in the Old Testament, they had an unclean animal. In Deuteronomy 14:21, they had an unclean animal. The Jews could not eat the unclean animal because it represented something unclean. And if it died unto itself, if the animal died unto itself, then they couldn't eat the animal because it died unto itself. But then it says in the passage that they could take the animal to the gates and give it to a stranger. It's like, oh, they couldn't eat it, but they could give it to somebody else and let them eat it. See, it's what it represented. Another situation is in the same passage, Deuteronomy 14:21. It says, "Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk." And the idea is the milk is for nourishment. It's for helping the baby to grow, helping the kid to grow. You don't kill a kid in its mother's milk. There's nothing wrong with eating veal, like a baby calf or a small goat or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, there's nothing wrong with just drinking milk. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's what it represents. It says, "Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk." And so it's what it represents. It's not that there's anything wrong with the milk. It's not that there's anything wrong with that meat there. It's just what it represents. It's the same way with that blood. You're not supposed to make a big deal about eating blood. And we suggest that you just don't eat it. We don't mess with it. Back in the Old Testament, when they slaughtered an animal, they took the blood out of it and threw it on the ground. And it says in Leviticus 17:13, it says to take dust and just throw the dust over the blood. Just cover it up on the ground and don't eat it. And so the Bible exhortation is before the law, they didn't eat it. During the law, they didn't eat it. And then there's warnings against eating it after the law. But Paul's epistles are the curriculum for the church age today. Paul wrote Romans through Philemon and Hebrews chapter 13. Paul says all things are lawful unto me. It's okay. You can eat it, but you got to make sure you can eat it with faith. In other words, he that doubteth is damned if he eats. Now myself, I just don't eat it. It's not because I'm worried about the nutritional value of the blood. To me, it's just what it represents. And so I'm not comfortable eating. I've been around blood sausage. I've seen it. I've had opportunity to eat it. I just don't eat it. And I've seen the blood pudding. I just don't eat it. I don't have anything to do with it. And to me, it's just what it represents. It represents life. And I'm not saying that I'm worried about poisoning myself from eating it. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is I know what it represents, and I just don't want to eat it. I've got personal problems with eating something like that, just knowing what it represents. But many times in the past, I had a steak. Where I live, there's no steaks around here. It's mainly poultry or pigs or something like that. You rarely see steaks, like cow steaks. You rarely see something like that in my area. But many times in the USA, I've had steaks. I've had them meat. I usually have a steak. I cook it like medium. My family in the United States, my family, they love to eat steaks. Like once a week, they'll have like steak and potato and salad, toast, that kind of thing. And usually I eat mine medium. But many times in the past, I'd even eat it medium rare even. And had just a little bit of blood in there. And I'm not like trying to extract the blood out of the meat. I cut it up and enjoy it. It doesn't bother me at all. See, I just don't make a big deal about going after a totally blood product like blood sausage or something like that. I don't go after that. I've got conscience issues about eating something like that, so I just don't eat it. So if you got a doubt about eating it, then I just wouldn't eat it. The Bible does give some exhortations about not eating it before the law, during the law, and after the law. But we're in Paul's epistles. That's our curriculum for the church age today. Paul says all things are lawful. If you have doubts about it, he mentions the doubts again in Romans chapter 14, verse 23. So if you got doubts about eating it, I just wouldn't eat it. When I was in Hawaii, they would actually slaughter the pigs and cook the pigs underground. And actually, when they got done, it was very delicious. I've eaten it before. And they took the blood out of the animal. They didn't cook the animal with the blood in the animal. What Saul was warning the people about in 1 Samuel 14, verse 32, he's saying you don't cook the animal with the blood in the ground. That's what he's warning about. And he taught by example. He showed the people, he had them roll in a big stone, and he slaughtered the animals on top of the stone, and the blood flowed off, that kind of thing. So we don't recommend it, cooking an animal with the blood in the animal. We suggest that you extract the blood out of the animal before you cook it. And then as far as eating a blood product like blood sausage or blood pudding, we suggest that you go with your conscience. Myself, I've got doubts about it, so I don't eat it. If you're good with that, I've known of people that ate it and enjoyed it. If you're good with that, we have no problem with that whatsoever. So anyway, we have a little bonus section coming up on how to make sand coffee. And we hope that's a blessing to you. And we're going to go to that at this time. Before your eyes here is a device. Look for these little yellow sparkles here. This device has sand in it, and at the very bottom there's heating elements. And this is heated by electricity. And the only way the heat can escape is to go through this sand. This is sand here. And these are metal cups. And they put coffee grains and water in these metal cups. And they put them in the sand, and they use the handle. They use these handles, and they move it around through the sand. They just move it, they keep moving it all around through the sand. And the only way for the heat to escape is to go through these metal cups. And what happens is the coffee grains liquefy. They turn to liquid. And when it's all said and done, when it's over, when they pull the cup out like this right here, it's usually almost bubbling out the top, like right there. And then they take that and pour it into either a paper cup or ceramic cup. And you have a totally liquefied coffee. And it's produced by a heating element that's under sand. And so we call it sand coffee. And that's the way they do it in a Russian environment. Okay. Making sand coffee is very interesting in that they put that cup in the sand, and the only way for the heat to escape is to actually go up through the cup. And that's the way that they would actually, in some places like in Hawaii, cook the Kalua pig. They actually put the hot coals in the ground, and they put the animal on top of the coals. And it's like in a hole in the ground. And the only way the heat can escape is to go through the animal. It's sealed off. And the only way the heat in the ground can escape, couldn't go around, had to go through the animal and get out. So it's well cooked. It's cooked really good. But they took the blood out of it. At least the places that I was at, they actually slaughtered the animal and took the blood out before they cooked the animal. And so this video, I hope it's been a blessing to you. Our exhortation was basically get the blood out of the animal before you eat your meat. And we don't mean go off the deep end and do these things to extract blood from your steak or something like that. We promote eat, drink, and enjoy, and we want to enjoy our food. And so anyway, hope this video has been a blessing to you. Thank you very much for watching.